Today on Chasing Cars, we're checking out Skoda's facelifted Karoq. It was supposed to arrive here back in March, but with delays and chip shortages, it's here only now, roughly the end of August, early September. But we finally got our hands on it. There are two models as there were before, the Sportline 4x4 and the Style 110 TSI. That's the variant we're going to be focusing on today, and we're going to be seeing whether or not this car is worth the premium over what it was before. Because now it's $3,000 more expensive to get into, and the one behind me has an almost $11,000 premium pack stuck on, meaning this is 54 grand or thereabouts drive away here in New South Wales. So is it worth it? Well, let's dive into today's independent review and check that out. It's a rare feat that Skoda's achieved with the facelifted Karoq in making it look actually better. And they've done that by actually simplifying the design of this medium SUV. It's a little bit more toned down at the front here, and I think it's all the better for it. Now you can tell the style because it's got black cladding around it. The Sportline can be told apart by the body colored cladding and a slightly more aggressive front fascia. Now for fuel consumption as well, this has improved for the new Karoq. 0.1 litres per 100 kilometres better in the official ADR combined consumption cycle. So little gains for the new Karoq. You also have these new 18-inch alloy wheel designs down here on this base model style. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the sizing of this car because it is interesting. Now Skoda calls it its medium SUV, but in reality, when you look at numbers and overall length, this car is much more comparable to something like a Kia Seltos, only 12 millimeters longer, and it's actually shorter overall than a Mazda CX-30. And yet, as we jump inside, you'll see just how well packaged this Skoda is. It's a hallmark of the brand. It's the same thing with the Karoq and Kodiaq. They sort of straddle the boundaries between each SUV segment, and I think that's a really good thing. But let's check around the boot and see how big it is. Around the rear, the styling of the Karoq remains restrained, and I think this car looks really classy, especially finished in this orange in style grade. It's very handsome, but of course, let me know your thoughts down below. You also get the really nice luxury touch of having sequential indicators, which look really stylish out on the road. And on this style, you even get a power tailgate as standard. Great little inclusion for this kind of price. And then under that boot lid is where the magic happens, because at 588 litres of boot space, this thing is simply huge in the rear end, considering it is under 4.4 metres long. You've also got really clever stuff, the VarioFlex seating arrangement, allowing you to take out the rear seats individually and expand the cargo capacity up to 1,810 litres. That is simply huge for a little SUV like this. You also get thoughtful touches like these nets that you can see here that are really easy to remove if you don't want to use them in there, a reversible boot floor to protect the carpet, and even with all that space, you still get a space saver rear tyre under the floor. Great touches, and it's all these little things that add up to make this car seem like much better value when you start digging under the skin, because on the face of it, it's very close in price to a Volkswagen Tiguan 132 TSI Life, which is a physically larger vehicle with a 2-litre turbocharged engine. So on the face of it, on the internet, when you first go into the dealer, for example, you might think that car strikes much better value. But as you start to live with a vehicle like the Skoda Karoq, you understand the little things do add up to a big difference. The classic values of Skoda, being pragmatism and frugality, really come to the fore inside the Karoq's interior. Because frugality is not about spending the least amount of money possible, it's about getting as much as you can from the money that you do spend and having something that feels nice and will last a long time. And that really sums up the Karoq's cabin. There's no chintz or sort of eye-catching technology package, it's just stuff that works. There's a 10.25-inch digital driver's display in front of me with full mapping capabilities, and that looks fantastic. This optional 9.2-inch touchscreen with navigation, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto also just works really well. It's not as big as some of this car's rivals, but as I said, it just functions, it's responsive, and you have nice shortcut buttons on the side there. You also have physical climate controls down here, which make it really easy to interact with everything you need to when you're in the Karoq. Then you've got the thoughtful practicalities like wireless charging as standard, this adjustable armrest, which is really comfortable, covered off storage, and this nice little rubberized storage zone down here. Great door pockets for 1-litre camping bottles. You've even got a little door bin in there for actual rubbish like apple cores or, wrappers from Sweeties or something like that. And it all just works really nicely. And it's not like Skoda has compromised on material quality either, because you've got soft touch materials up here on the top of the doors, a really nice soft dash, soft mold down here as well, and this cute little storage cubby that I should have mentioned before in the practicality section. And then of course the steering wheel, which is the thing you interact with most in this Skoda Karoq, and it just feels really nice. Perforated leather upholstery, slightly flattened bottom, and it has a visual lightness to it. So Yeah, I think although the Skoda Karoq might not win when it comes to wow factor compared to some other vehicles, for example a Haval H6, which has all of this crazy technology and design, what really matters is that this cabin works, is functional and feels really high quality. Even these seats that are optional in this car, they're part of that $10,900 premium pack. They have 3-stage heating and they have this lovely sort of buckety tombstone design that really nicely treads the line between comfort and sportiness. You do have good bolstering to hold you in corners, and they're appointed in leather, which also feels high quality. And yeah, the Karoq just works in here. It's a nice place to be, and you've got great visibility out too. If the Skoda Karoq experience has sounded really positive so far, when it comes to the back seat, this is where this car doesn't feel medium like a lot of its other rivals. Now that's because Skoda has really prioritized boot space and front seat comfort. That said, behind my own driving position at 6'2", I can still be comfortable back here. Yes, my legs are just brushing the seat in front of me and these seats are slid all the way back, but I've got heaps of headroom because of this car's nice boxy proportions, and I've also got heaps of tow room as well. With that $10,900 premium pack, I also have 3-stage heating for both outboard seats and of course air vents back here to keep me cool as well. There is a bit of a miss in the hard and scratchy plastics up on the top of the door cards, but it's not the end of the day because you do have soft padding here where you actually need to rest your arm, and this middle seat can be folded down to have an armrest with 2.5 cup holders. Now speaking of the middle seat, it is actually usable. You could just about squeeze 3 fairly skinny people back here, but ultimately the Karoq feels like it's best size for a maximum of 4 people, or 2 in the front with 2 baby seats in the back here, because you've got really easy to access ISOFIX ports on both of the outboard seats. The ADR combined fuel consumption figure for the Skoda Karoq is 6.5 litres per 100 kilometres. We nearly managed to match that. It's a rare thing for chasing cars, and although we didn't test this car on our normal test loop, it's still pretty impressive that we saw 6.6 litres per 100 kilometres. As for insurance, the median budget direct customer paid $807 to comprehensively insure their new Skoda Karoq over the last 12 months. Now your premium may vary based on things that insurers take into account, such as where you live, your driving history, and whether or not you garage the car. As for servicing, Skoda offers up to 7-year care plans for all of their new vehicles. It's going to cost you $2,400 for this car behind me, and that includes an extension of the warranty from the usual 5 years and unlimited kilometres to 7 years and unlimited kilometres, matching Kia's, a little bit short of Mitsubishi's, but still, for a European car, having that extra peace of mind is surely a great thing. Out on the road, both Skoda Karoqs are actually really quite different beasts. They have very different engines, although they're both 4 cylinders, and they have different drivetrain configurations. The one that we're in right now is the style with the 110 TSI engine. That means the slightly older 1.4 litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder engine kicking out 110 kilowatts of power and 250 newton meters of torque. Now, being the slightly older engine, it is also hooked up to the front wheels only via an 8-speed Aisin-sourced torque converter automatic. There's no dual clutches here, and I know some people really like that, but personally I am a big fan of the feeling of a dual clutch gearbox, but that's going to be horses for courses, and I think this will suit the majority of the population really rather well. Now, as for the refinement of this engine, it's not quite as good as that 1.5 litre TSI Evo engine that is starting to pop up in some of the Volkswagen Group products. For example, in the Skoda Fabia that we'll be driving very shortly, that car has that engine, the more advanced 1.5, which should drop fuel consumption paired with a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. But you know what? This engine is actually really a lot better than something like a screamy, shouty 2-litre naturally aspirated engine that produces about the same amount of power, and in the real world it is a little bit more fuel efficient as well. Now, being the front-wheel drive car, it does mean that with this MQB platform, the rear end of this car is a little bit more rudimentary. It's just a simple torsion beam setup, and that helps increase the boot space on this car to 588 litres, as I mentioned before. The all-wheel drive with multi-link in the 4x4 Sportline is more complex and is a little bit more difficult to package, meaning you get a smaller boot size. But I think even though you've got a sportier suspension tune in that 4x4 Sportline, it actually might ride a little bit better than this car. It's not bad, but it is on 18-inch alloys, shod in 215 50 series Michelin Primacy 3 tyres, and there are occasions where the rear end's torsion beam setup does just feel a little bit firmer. And perhaps something like a Skoda Octavia strikes a better balance between ride quality, comfort, and handling dynamics. But that's not to say that this Karoq isn't a really good handling medium or large small SUV because it really is one of the best. Skoda and Volkswagen Group in general tends to have really nice, easy to use, light and friendly steering systems. The same rings true here. You've also got a couple of different modes to dial up through. So you got normal mode, and I think that suits this car most of the time. You got sport mode, which amplifies the engine response a little bit and adds a little bit more weight, meatiness to the steering. But on balance, I think just normal mode's really very good. Now you can get dynamic chassis control on the up-spec 140 TSI as an option, and that really does transform this car and make it not only sportier but also more comfortable again. So if you're starting to get the picture, I'd probably be considering going for that 140 TSI if you're a keen driver, because it just unlocks a little bit more of the Karoq's potential. But still, for what this car is, it's one of the best handling in class, in my opinion. It has a really nice crisp turn-in and a great balance, and it's just such a friendly car to drive on a good road. No, it's not going to reach the dynamic heights of a sedan like the Skoda Octavia I mentioned before, but considering you get this fantastic commanding view out with this big glass screen, big windows with a fairly low shoulder line, and fantastic rear visibility that can't be said for some of this vehicle's competitors, means that it's a very easy to SUV to use, not only out here in the country, but also around town. That's also aided by this car's sheer size, which is very small for its class and very small for the amount of space that you can fit in. And that really comes to the fore when you need to squeeze it into a tight parking spot, which you do need to around Sydney quite often. Now, out on the open road and the freeway, this car is also pretty refined, generally speaking. Certainly for road noise and tyre roar, it's a very quiet vehicle. But you do actually hear that four-cylinder engine drumming through a little bit. I'm not sure if it's the combination with the torque converter automatic that seems a little bit louder, or this car's slightly previous generation TSI engine versus the newer 1.5, which seems to be a little bit more subdued in its sound. But it is a little bit noisier than something like a Volkswagen Tiguan 132 TSI, with that car fitted with that 2-litre turbo petrol engine. It's also a little bit louder than that car when it comes to rear suspension sound with the torsion beam fitted. There's a little bit of resonance you can hear coming from the back echoing through this car, which, look, that's a real nitpick. It's not a big deal at all, but it is there, and is one of the reasons maybe that you might want to spend a little bit more, again, to go for that 140 TSI Sportline. As for safety, this is an interesting one when it comes to Karoq, because as standard it does get a 5-star ANCAP rating as of 2018 for that previous protocol, but to get things like reverse AEB, rear cross traffic alert, a 360 camera and highway assist, so stop and go functionality, and a more advanced lane trace assist, you have to opt for the technology package. Now this car has that fitted along with the premium pack, as I've covered already, but you do need to spend that extra money if you want to get the safest Karoq you can with reverse AEB. Still, as standard, you get blind spot monitoring, forwards AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection, and you also get a lane departure warning feature, as well as a reversing camera and front and rear parking sensors. So the standard equipment list isn't bad, but considering where we're at now with the current ANCAP protocols, it is probably worthwhile speccing that extra package. Now, Skoda do say that in Australia, those packages have a very high take rate. Apparently, something about our buyers means that we just want to go for the best, have the best, and not think about it. So I'm sure that's going to be the case, but I do just wish things like reverse AEB were perhaps included standard on the equipment list. But still, that's not to take away from how excellent this Skoda Karoq is out on the road. Yes, the 140 TSI feels more advanced, a little bit more refined, and a little bit sharper to drive, but honestly, for an everyday SUV, the Skoda Karoq style 110 TSI is a really, really interesting pick. So, what do we think of the Skoda Karoq? Well, it's becoming pretty clear that Skoda is no longer the budget VW Group brand. This car is a lot more expensive than it was before when you have it here fully spec'd up, but it does justify that price tag. I think there's really nice surprise and delight features, and the fact that the packaging on this vehicle is just so thoughtful and fantastic. You fit 4 people in comfort into a really small footprint without sacrificing on boot space, and that is something to be applauded in an era of cars that are getting less and less space efficient. Of course, it's not going to be for everyone, and personally, I think I'd spend the extra money to get my hands on the 4x4 Sportline with that gruntier 2-litre turbocharged engine, but still, the style grade is really comfortable to drive and a really nice choice. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below. Have you bought a Skoda Karoq, or are you considering one or one of its rivals? Let me know down there. And while you're there leaving your comments, why not hit subscribe to the Chasing Cars channel if you haven't done so already? And as always, thank you very much for watching.